Hello. In this video, I'm going to be going through practice problem set 1-7 with you. This practice problem set focuses on continuing to refine the skills you've already been developing with regard to identifying conclusions. What's different about this practice problem set compared to the earlier ones is that now we are looking at arguments where words that in English are common premise introducers or common conclusion introducers are being used with entirely different meanings. I did not try to be comprehensive in discussing this topic in the assigned reading. That would take far too long, and frankly, I don't think that even if I had all the time in the world, I could do that for you. But we are going to go through together some common ways in which this can occur, and you will need to continue to develop your sensitivity to this particular kind of complication. It's still useful, though, to look for common premise introducers and common conclusion introducers. You just need to be aware that if you see one of those words or phrases, you cannot just automatically assume that that's how that word or phrase is functioning in the passage you're looking at. You do have to put a little thought into how the word or phrase is being used. Okay, in going through a few problems with you from this practice problem set, we're going to continue to be writing conclusions by themselves. We will also write any common premise introducers or common conclusion introducers that are used. And when we write a conclusion by itself, we need to be sure that we write it in a way that meets all four of these conditions. We write it as a complete sentence, which is expressed as a statement as opposed to, say, a rhetorical question, for example. We need to make sure that sentence makes sense by itself and that it contains all and only the information that the arguer intends as part of the conclusion. So in looking at 1-7, but making sure we write conclusions in a way that they meet these conditions, we'll be doing some review of the earlier material on conclusion identification that you've already worked on. All right, let me start with number 1, which is from a novel. The speaker is a fictional character called Nakata, who says, "Ever since I was little, people said, 'You're dumb, you're dumb, so I suppose I must be.'" I noticed two words in there that are commonly used as introducers. The word since, which, when it introduces part of an argument, introduces a premise, and the word so, which, when it introduces part of an argument, introduces a conclusion. Let's focus on the part of this that has the word since in it. There, the character says, "Ever since I was little, people said, 'You're dumb, you're dumb.' Ever since I was little." Clearly there, at least I hope it's clear to you as it is to me, that the word since is not introducing the speaker's premise, but instead is being used to talk about time. All right, so let's forget about since, move on to so, which is a common conclusion introducer. After so, the character says, "I suppose I must be." Well, not all of that is the conclusion, but at least the word so is letting us know the position of the conclusion. The speaker is drawing a conclusion about how she must be from what people told her ever since she was little. Okay, so in number 1 is indeed a conclusion introducer. Again, just using CI as an abbreviation for conclusion introducer. After so, this says, "I suppose I must be." We're going to need to make some changes there. As we've already discussed, I suppose, I think, I believe, words and phrases like that, when they're used kind of around the position of a conclusion, are almost never part of the conclusion. And here it's not. The speaker's conclusion is not about what she must suppose, but it's about, well, basically her intelligence. We can't just write, "I must be." That doesn't make sense by itself. Ask yourself, what must she be? Go back to the premise to answer that question. The premise said, "Ever since I was little, people said you're dumb." And from that, the speaker concludes that she must be dumb. So, I'll just put, "I must be dumb," as the conclusion for number 1. All right, I want to move on now to, let's see, number 4. Here, when the writer uses the pronoun us, he's referring to Japanese LGBT people. And he said, because Japanese society is so staunchly intolerant, it forces many of us to stay in the closet, whether we want to be there or not. I'm noticing here 2 words that are commonly used as introducers. We've got the word because at the very beginning, that common premise introducer, and we've got the word so. In talking about number 1, we were treating so, or I shouldn't say treating, we were understanding so as introducing a conclusion. But that's not what's going on here. If you notice, because is introducing a statement that ends at the comma. That statement says, Japanese society is so staunchly intolerant. We cannot break that up into parts that are themselves statements treating so as a conclusion introducer. That just doesn't make any sense. So, instead, is meaning something here like to such a very great extent, or really, or very, a lot, something along those lines. And it's part of the meaning of the premise that because is introduced. To get to the conclusion then, skip to the end of the premise and pick up after the comma. It forces many of us to stay in the closet. It. What does it refer to? We're going to have to replace the pronoun it with what it refers to so that this makes sense by itself. Something like Japanese society. Forces many of us to stay in the closet whether we want to be or not. All right, that was number 4. I want to talk about number 5 next. Number 5 reads as follows. Corporations don't have the same obligations as citizens do. Therefore, they shouldn't be entitled to the same rights. I'm seeing here 2 words that are commonly used as introducers. First is the word as, which, like you already know, introduces a premise when it introduces any part of an argument at all. And then later on in the first line, the word therefore, that common conclusion introducer. Notice here, though, that the word as is functioning comparatively. A comparison is being drawn between corporations and citizens in that sentence that says, or that statement that says, corporations don't have the same obligations as citizens do. So there, the comparative use of as is entirely different from its use to introduce a premise. The word as, in other words, is not introducing a premise here. Therefore, of course, is introducing the conclusion that they, that is corporations, shouldn't be entitled to the same rights as citizens. Well, then, by process of elimination, the premise must be the statement before that. Corporations don't have the same obligations as citizens do. Now let me notice a couple of things about writing this conclusion accurately by itself. First off, right after therefore was the word they, but I had to replace the pronoun they with the noun corporations to which they referred, so this would make sense by itself. And what I've written so far is not entirely correct. Corporations shouldn't be entitled to the same rights. The same rights as who or what? That question is not answered in what I've written, but the premise, providing the context for understanding the conclusion, makes it clear that the comparison is between corporations and citizens. So let's build that in at the very end of the conclusion here so that this does make sense by itself. All right,